Hey, welcome back. In this video you will learn a new skill, how to create prototypes for your apps. So what is a prototype? A prototype is a preliminary version of your app. It's not the app itself, it looks like an app, but it's not the app. So a prototype is something you create before you code your app. Let me explain you with an example. Here on the right you can see the to-do app that we built previously, so it's a web app. And here on the left you see the prototype of that app. So normally, if you want to work on a professional level, you first want to build a prototype, which is this here on the left. So this is just a visual representation of the app so that you know how the app looks like. Now, we didn't built this prototype previously in the course because this is an advanced concept and we were covering Python basics, so I didn't want to divert from the purpose of those days. But now you are ready to actually learn to create professional prototypes. So why do you need a prototype? Why can't you just start coding right away? Well, by creating a prototype, you actually save yourself time because once you create a prototype, and a prototype is easier to create than an app, as you'll see in this video, once you have the prototype, then you can just look at that prototype and then you can start coding, and coding will be easier because you have a visual form of what you want to do. A prototype can also be useful if you're working with clients or investors, so before you start coding your app, which takes a lot of time compared to the prototype, you first make a prototype and show the prototype to your clients or your investors. And they can suggest changes, and then you iterate with the prototype until they like the final prototype, then you go and start coding. So let's learn how to create prototypes. For that we need to use a software, and the industry standard for prototyping is Figma. So please go to your browser, go to figma.com, and then you want to sign up for a free account on Figma. Once you sign up and you log in, you should be able to see this screen. So that's your dashboard. So Figma is a browser-based app. You can access it from your browser, but you can also download the Figma desktop app. Just search on Google for Figma desktop app and the first search result should take you to the desktop app for macOS or Windows. So please download that and install the software. It's pretty straightforward. Once you have the software, then you can better work in the app instead of the browser. But both versions are okay. So if you prefer to work on the browser version, that's totally fine. So let me close what I have opened previously. I want to close everything here, and that will take me to the dashboard. So now I'm on the desktop app here. These are my existing prototypes that I've created earlier, and to create a new prototype you want to go to that new design file button. Perhaps in your version it could be named differently, it could look differently, because Figma can have updates once in a while, so you should press that to create a new blank document. So now I'll take you through how to use Figma, and I do recommend you to follow this instructions to get to know Figma, because Figma is also required when you apply for jobs. So apart from having Python skills, there's also another set of skills related to programming that you need to know. So these types of programming videos are focused so that you get a broad set of skills. Let's start. In Figma, we have this toolbar here. The first item here has several other items, and all these are for modifying your existing elements here on the page. Now we don't have any elements, so we're going to skip that first button. The second item, which is by default set to move, defines the way you move around the elements. Again, we don't have any elements, so we're going to look at that later. The third item, here is where we begin. This allows us to create a frame. So I'm going to press that. You can also see that you can press F to create a frame. So once I press that or I press F, then this plus sign shows up and I can draw my first frame in here. So what is a frame? The frame is actually the page. So we might have several frames for our app, depending how many pages we have in our app. For example, let's say we are creating a survey web app, a web app where we show surveys to the users. They can press buttons, check boxes, and this survey will have like several pages. So then we want to create several frames. The first page will be one frame, the second page of the web app where the user goes after submitting the results or so will be the second frame, and so on. And so we can stack those frames here horizontally. So we have this one, we can create another one, and so on. So let's focus on one frame first. Our app is going to have one frame only, so let's focus on this frame. If you click outside the frame, you unselect the frame. To select the frame again, you should click near the label here. So click there, and then you want to go to here on the right. So when you click an element, in this case a frame, the properties of that element show here on the right. And each of these properties can be changed. So you can click, for example, the X, which is the position of the frame, and you can type a new value there. What I want to change in this case is the dimensions of the frame. So for example, I can set it to a desktop size. So I press on desktop, and that will change the size of the frame to desktop pixel dimensions. You can double click over the label there and change it to first page, for example. And here on the left, you will see now all the elements that you have in your document. So we only have the frame. You can see the icon here of the frame, and the label of that frame is first page. Let's move on. The next item in the toolbar here is the shape item, and you have several shapes you can draw on your frame. For example, let's create a hamburger button here, which will expand the menu. So if you can recall it, we have this button here, right, which expands the menu. So we want to create that. So what I have just created now is one rectangle. So you can increase its size and so on. So I want to duplicate this rectangle. For that, you can press Ctrl D or Command D. Once you do that, the new copy will be appended on top of the existing one. So if you drag this down, you are dragging the copy of that. If you press again Ctrl D or Command D, the next item will be automatically placed below that other item. So we have those three rectangles. You can select all of them and you can change the properties of them. So we have properties for the size. We have auto layout, which we'll cover later on in just a bit. We have constraints. That's an advanced case. We're not going to cover all the advanced concepts of Figma now. And you can change the fill color of those rectangles. So make it a bit darker gray. And I'll leave it there. So now you can see that we have a tree-like structure here, where we have a frame here on the left, and the frame has children, so it has three rectangles in this case. So we have these shapes, and you can also draw freehand shapes. For example, you can use a pen to draw these shapes, or you can use the pencil. These two tools, so the pencil and the pen, are not usually needed. And so to delete these two drawings, you can select them and press on backspace or delete button on your keyboard. Next, we have text. So you can press on that item and then go here and drag the area. So this would be my to-do app. So that's the text. Now you need to select that and you go to the properties, and down here under text you can see the font size. So you want to change that to perhaps 64. If you want to change it to bold, change it from regular to bold, and so on. You can decrease the size of this box now to make it fit to the text inside it. And now we can also explain this scale tool here. So if you press that and you expand this, so that will scale the text. But when you have this move selected, that will move the border around that. So I hope that makes sense. We can add more text. This is my to-do app. So you see the app part went below the first part, so you can select the first part, expand it, and that will automatically fill in the text box. So to change the color of the text now, you can go to fill. So that's the color of the text. Maybe make it more gray. And select it again to change the font to 40, for example. One more piece of text, you can always select that and duplicate it with Ctrl D or Command D, place it down here. This app is to increase your productivity, so that would be perhaps 25, regular, and that's it. Now, how do we make these checkboxes? Let me show you that. For checkboxes now we need shapes, and specifically we need a rectangle. So I'm going to draw a rectangle here. I think 35 by 35 would be a good size. So you want to draw like the dimensions approximately, and then you can select that shape and then go to the properties. So you want to change width to 35 and height to 35 to make it an ideal square. Now you can click over that again, and you want to have a border around the rectangle. For that you want to click the plus icon on the stroke menu here. So that will add this border. You can change the color to something else, perhaps, like more grayish. And then you can remove the fill. For that you need to go to the fill menu, fill property, and you can actually press the minus button to remove the fill. To make the corners of this checkbox round, you want to go here on top. You see this, it's 0. You can make it 9, that would be a good size. So there we have a checkbox. Then we need some text next to that. So I'm going to duplicate this with Ctrl D, drag it here, throw the trash, perhaps. The box of the text is too big, so I'm going to decrease it around here. And then, so you want to make sure that this snaps to that checkbox, so that would be fine. And I want to duplicate this go in here, and this other checkbox, I'm going to mark it as checked. So we want to show to the user both the unchecked version and the checked version as well. So we need a tick mark symbol. For such symbols, you can use plugins. For that, you need to go to this item and then search for font awesome icons. So you should see this font awesome icons there, and you should press that and run it. So that should show this icons, and you can search for check here. So take that, press that icon, and you want to drag it inside here. Perhaps with the arrow keys you can select it and move it up and down with your keyboard arrow keys. And you see there's also this symbol here. You need to delete that. That was the label of the check mark. So now we have two types of checkboxes, a checked checkbox and an unchecked checkbox. Now I want to introduce you to auto layout. Auto layout is a grouping tool which will group several elements together. For example, in this case, we want to have each of these rows as one group. So because currently when I click something, the checkbox next to that is not clicked. So I have to select them and move them around if I want to move them both. But if we use auto layout, then we can just drag that without having to select it. So you can select both of those items, the checkbox and the label, right click and then go to add auto layout or press Shift A. So that will group those two elements together. You can move them around now. So then they bring them in here. Now for the next element, you should do it in two steps. First, you should select the checkbox and its mark by doing this, and then go to auto layout, and then you should select that grouped checkbox and the label, and then again press on add auto layout. Right. Now these are grouped, but you can still right click here, right click again, and change the text of a label. Now I want to duplicate this first checkbox again, drag it down here. You can follow the red guidelines in here. So 26 and 26 is the spacing between the elements. Again, Control D or Command D, drag it up here, maybe one more time. And yeah, there we go. You can make it more realistic by adding some different to-do items here instead of leaving everything the same label. And that's it. Finally, we need to add that input box here on our app. There are two ways to do that actually. You can either use a rectangle, but a better way is to use text. So drag it here, the size you want it. It's about this. And then you want to say add new to do, like that. Then you want to select that and you want to change the properties. So first of all, we want to go to text and you can see the font size. Make sure this is fine for you. Then I want to center this text vertically. So I want to click on this, align middle. So now this is centered vertically. Next, we want to give this a background. So the fill is actually the color of the text. So since this fill property points to the text, we need to do something else to be able to change the fill of the text box instead. To be able to change the fill color of the text box, you need to turn this text into auto layout again. Once you do that, then when you click this, you are clicking on the auto layout. And then if you go to the properties, you add a fill now and change that to light gray, for example. Maybe something bluish. Somewhere in here, yeah. So that will change the background of that label. You can always change the text by double clicking, click again, and you can add more text. To make this auto layout bigger, you want to click there, but be careful because you see these purple reddish lines. This will change the padding. So if I change that, that will change the padding, the spacing between the text and the borders of the text box. So if you want to change the size of the entire text box, you want to click that text box, get one of these corners and expand that to somewhere here. To change the text color, you want to click again until you get the text. You can also see here on the left side what you have selected. So in this case is the actual text element, so you know exactly what you're working on. So with that selection, you can see here the fill is still black, so we can change it to something gray like that. Now you can round the corners of this text box. So for that, click the auto layout element, go to this and change it to perhaps 7, and that should be fine. You can use the same technique by creating a text and then using auto layout to create buttons, because this could also be looking like a button. And that's it. So to position this text, you can use this padding here like that, or you can access these paddings also from here. So you can play around with this auto layout numbers in here. From the left, the top padding, so let's change it to 10 for example, or 12, and so on. So that's the final version of our prototype. So at first Figma might look intimidating, but you'll get a hang of it after you use it a couple of times. So thanks a lot for following this. I'll see you later.